like to open, make sure everyone's aware, we're not going to have PowerPoint presentations with people trying to highlight how wonderful their modules are or things like that. It's very much a two-way peak traffic here. We do want to have audience engagement. We'll give plenty of opportunity for people to ask questions, and we will hopefully get some good dialogue going. With that, I'd like to introduce my members here of the panel. Closest to me is Dr. Guan from Trina Solar. Next to Dr. Guan is Florian Hatzbackel from Calypso. Next to him is Fiesto Risotto from LPK Solar. And my far right, as you can get with an Australian, they're always the furthest away from everybody, is Dr. Stuart Wenham from Suntech. Thank you very much, guys, for coming here. First question I must ask, and this is very much, I think, to someone involved directly in thin film. Florian, the cadmium telluride thin film company. So we've seen the collapse of what everyone thought was one of the most well-funded, one of the most differentiated companies in the thin film market. It was certainly not a me-too thin film product in the form of Cylindra. What's your take on why a company of Cylindra's possible capabilities and certain investment, why did it all go wrong? What happened? What do you think was really wrong with it? And what lessons do you feel the industry should take from this?
I think very much in general that the biggest problem was that the product itself was too specific. My understanding is that they never have been able, and they never really thought they would be able to drive down the cost of the product itself, but they wanted to reach low costs by lower POS costs, and I think this didn't work out in the end. In my opinion, it was clear already roughly 2 years ago, but I questioned myself already what I didn't understand about the product. I think now I got clear. The other thing is what I'm seeing, I think, driving up a new technology, it's very difficult if you do that too fast, because you will have to go through specific cycles of learning. You will need to have relatively long time your product in the field in order to show the performance of the product. You will have to show that you have good yields on your line, and these kind of things you need to do maybe with 1 or 2 lines, but most probably not with an investment of nearly $1 billion. And I think that most probably was the biggest problem, that when you're taking up too fast capacity, which you cannot sell in the end. I think right now it's getting more and more difficult for any new startup company to get technology into the market because of these questions of financing and sustainability. Right now what I'm hearing here, that even large companies get problems with the financing of their products, so it's even more difficult for the small companies. So if you want to do that, I think you really have to do it on a relatively small scale, and then you need to be able to prove on that scale that you are as good as the other technology. And unless you have done that, nobody is interested in you. And I think that's the only way you can do it right now. So let's say relatively cash conservative, you have to save your cash all the time, but show that you have extremely good technology at the same time. And if you're not able to do that, you will not be successful.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that. Another company that, in fact, I want to ask another panelist about the Cylindro aspect, that's Stuart from Suntech. It wasn't long ago that Suntech was actually going to play in the thin film market, but decided to pull out. Was Was it lack of the differentiation factor or the difficulty in as Florian described there in great detail, the challenges of product launching and the actual costs involved is more of a hindrance to thin film than perhaps say crystalline. The actual equipment costs seem to be a lot less than the others. So the costs in theory seem to be a lot less.
I think in our case with regard to thin film, when we did our IPO back in 2005, we talked about our thin film technology that we were developing, and we said at that time that we didn't think our thin film technology would be ready for commercialisation until probably 5 to 10 years away, probably more likely 10 years away. What then happened after that, of course, was the shortage of silicon pushed prices up very drastically, and so we saw an opportunity to accelerate the commercialisation of our thin film technology. And I think we, like many companies in the thin film area, saw a great opportunity with silicon prices incredibly high. And to the credit of First Solar, they did a great job at grabbing that opportunity, grabbing great market share with a good product, and have done very well. But I think we're also seeing most other thin film companies really struggling now that the cost of crystalline silicon has plummeted back down to more reasonable levels. And so in our case, our thin film technology, once the prices of crystalline silicon dropped so drastically, our thin film technology simply wasn't competitive any longer. And so we made the decision to go take our thin film technology back to the R&D lab. Doesn't mean we don't think it has good opportunity in the future, we do. We actually think there's great opportunity for thin film crystalline silicon, but the efficiencies need to be much higher. I think, thin films, unless you can get to efficiencies like 15%, in the longer term will never compete with crystalline silicon for large-scale power generation.
On a general sort of problem that the industry is covering is obviously we're seeing huge margin pressure across the supply chain now. As the first half of this year, we saw very weak, market demand. But what does the panel feel about, what is the key to driving down manufacturing costs? What is it that you really have to focus on? Is it simply rely on cheaper polysilicon, or what are some of the key focuses from a cost reduction strategy that you feel that are needed? Because it looks like we're going to have a much more longer term cost reduction drive, and margins are going to be under a lot of pressure for a lot longer than most people think. Perhaps Ernesto at LDK, you're a materials provider. You've seen your margins come under significant pressure, yet you're a very low-cost provider. What do you see as the challenges? What do you see is required?
Okay. LDK started as wafer manufacturer, but soon we realized that it was better to be integrated. And in the last 2 years, we pursued the integration. We are now at about 2 gigawatts of full integrated chain from the poly to the module. And we think this is the way to reduce cost and be competitive in the market.
Do you feel that obviously you've been scaling at a tremendous rate, but we're seeing overcapacity? Is there now a challenge for you in underutilization of facilities because of the weakness in market demand, or does it really not impact you so much because you can keep driving costs down?
We are suffering from this issue, but it seems that at least the Chinese market is going up, and the opportunity to have the full chain is accommodating problems in single sectors. We try to have for every sector an independent unit and marketing the product independently, so we can play with internal demand and external demand.
Now, obviously you're one of the companies, we're seeing a whole business move to the integrated business model from polysilicon right the way through to modules. But the challenge is can your polysilicon be cheaper than the bigger boys, the tier ones, the Hemlocks? At the end of the day, is that a cost driver, this material that's so crucial to at the moment to driving costs down?
Our model was in any case to peak. We started as the biggest, we were the biggest multi-wafer manufacturer in the world. And also for poly, you mentioned poly, we have an actual capacity of 12 kilo tons per year. At the end of this year, we will have 17, and middle of next year, 25 kilotons. This is not a small production, and it's big enough to compete with